Welcome back to the Shacknews Awards. We are handing out the award for Best Narrative Game of the year 2024. This is us talking about the story in a game, or the environment, like the environmental storytelling of a game, like the narrative, the overall gist of why you were playing this game. This is not this is not a category for Doom most of the time. It's not really a category for Mario. This is a category for those deeper games, like the Life is Stranges of the world, or the Personas of the world. So here we go. Let's get into the nominees, and then we'll get to talking about them. Our first one up here is Tales of Kenzara Zao. We have Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, Mario and Luigi Brothership, Metaphor ReFantazio, Life is Strange Double Exposure, and Neva. David, you seem to really like Tales of Kenzara Zao quite a bit. I don't know if you want to talk about the narrative a little bit for the folks at home.
Yeah, I think I've really deeply connected with it on a couple levels. The first is that it's just a great narrative, and I'll talk more about that. But the second is I lost my dad when I was 19, and this is a story about a shaman who is striking a deal with the god of death, basically, that if he completes certain tasks, he can bring his dad back from the afterlife. And you kind of get the feeling pretty early on that that's not going to happen because that's not how the world works or how life works. But it's a really powerful story told along the way in a genre that is really more about emergent, non-authorial play. Metroidvanias aren't often known for their narratives. They can have those moments in gameplay where something kind of pops out at you, but the story really drives this game. It drives everything from the powers you get to unlock new areas to what you do with certain boss fights. It's just a really powerful narrative that, like I said, I've really connected with, and it's kept me playing. And I think you all know me well enough to know by now that story isn't the reason I come to games, and I prefer to like emergent gameplay. I like those types of stories, but
Mm-hmm.
this has really kept me hooked and kept me playing.
Yeah, and I remember when they revealed the game, and the discussion about like how his father kind of motivated the story of this game, and like
Hmm.
the desire to even make this game.
Hmm.
So I think that's a narrative that many people can relate with. Familial relationships like that, but also a ton of like reverence for the culture, the African
Yes.
culture that they represent in it. It's a great game, and it's a standout game in this year, and
Mhm.
definitely worthy of a nomination. We talked about this in, I believe it was the best Xbox game category, but Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, TJ, is like very much a narrative game.
Yes, I mentioned it that like the gameplay is actually not the priority here. It's everything in service of telling a really really emotionally gripping story. The music, the atmosphere, like the sense of fractured elements in Senua's mind, the voices she hears and how they guide her, and then just her reactions to the world as she embarks on this brutal journey. Like this is I also mentioned previously that I don't think Hellblade 2 has as much oomph as Hellblade 1 just because you're past the surprises and you're past the discovery of like the elements that form the foundation of this. But it's still a really interesting story. Like, and it's a really well told one, a really well designed one, and like the use of Senua's psychosis to create these supernatural elements is really, really interesting,
Mhm.
and ultimately makes it even more gripping. Like it's. I don't really want to spoil anything, just because like I
No.
want people to play this game. I want people to see this story. It's not
Yeah.
long and it won't take up a lot of your time. It's on Game Pass, and it's a really interesting one.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's the tricky part about these deliberations for this category specifically. And I remember that last year when I was caping for Zelda, that I don't want even if you're not going to beat Tears of the Kingdom until 2030, I don't want to ruin the story for you. Everyone else on the internet might want to. I don't. And I feel that way about several games in this category. I feel that way about Hellblade as well as Metaphor coming up here. But yeah, like, we don't want to spoil games. That's not what this category is about. But we do want to let people know, like, hey, there's a meaningful story to be seen here. And but yeah, I do think David, your point is like most of the time you're not really that interested in that. But a game that can bring you both those things at once, I think those are those special games. Where you get a narrative and an amazing gameplay system that allows for emergent gameplay storytelling. It's when you combine those two that I think you get the most magical video games out there. But that's a delicate balance. And Hellblade 2 is kind of the opposite, though. It's more just heavy narrative, not the most compelling gameplay. This next game, I wish Ozzy was here to talk about this because I'm pretty sure it's his nomination. But Mario and Luigi Brothership. I believe the narrative arc that Ozzy found charming in this game was the relationship between Mario and Luigi as brothers. It's a simple concept, but you know, most Mario games don't really have like, I don't know. What's the story of Odyssey?
Adventure. That's the story.
Wrong.
Rescued a princess from Bowser.
Kind of. It's about Bowser trying to hold a wedding. But anyway, my point is no one cared what the story for Odyssey was. It was just 500 to 600 to 700 things to get, right? Depending on if you got to the dark side or the darker side of the moon or whatever. That's kind of my point, is that for a Mario game to show up in this category is very surprising to me. And I think it has to do with it being an RPG game, but also this relationship between Mario and Luigi actually being kind of delved into a little bit more. Also, have you heard their gibberish speak to each other in this game?
Yeah, it's adorable.
That's about it.
Like, just give me that.
Is
like,
it like
that's
Simish? Like the Sim language?
It's I
kinda
don't
like
know.
that.
It's gibberish, Greg. Like, go watch some gameplay. It's obviously their voices, but they sound silly, and I find it funny that a game can just have them talking to each other in complete gibberish and still show up in this category. Once again, we have to trust Ozzy here as he's completed the game. But he did say that the ending and the late part of the story really sticks the landing. There is a lot of stuff to do in the middle that might not be that interesting. And, we brought it up in the Strand category for Best Strand Game, as it is a game about connecting a world that's been disconnected literally. This game is so full of puns that should they be disqualified just for how many dad jokes are in the game? Like, can you still win the award for Best Narrative if every other line is a dad joke?
I think that elevates it. I think it elevates it.
Absolutely.
It elevates it. Okay. Good to know. That's good to know going forward.
Oh boy.
That doesn't sound good.
A precedent has been set.
Donovan already knows that's just a risk that he's going to have to do going down this road. But Donovan, come on, man. Tell us why Metaphor ReFantazio should probably win this award without spoiling this awesome game.
I mean, Atlas is known for their their story-rich games, like getting the Persona titles, and now is Studio Zero, the new specific team within Atlas that made Metaphor ReFantazio. It's so, well, I don't want to say it's a coincidence because it's probably not a coincidence, but so fitting that this game came out in 2024 because it just has such strong political themes in its story. I mean, the whole game is about a political power vacuum, and pretty much about a race for the throne. And there was a lot of discussion about it when it came out because the game wears all its themes and messaging on its sleeves. I mean, characters will straight up tell you, like, blah, blah, blah. Oppression has made life really hard for us. We should look at each other as equals, and we shouldn't make life hard for each other. And there's so many, I think, interesting ideas that Atlas throws at the user. And there's so many like inspiring, I guess, just themes, just the idea of like, power is important and the people we put into power is important, and how political power can be used to crush people or kind of put people beneath the thumb. But then it can also have the complete opposite effect. That was like you can bring great prosperity with political power. And I think in addition to the political themes, which I think are all great in that game, something I always look for in a good story is good characters. And the main traveling party in Metaphor ReFantazio is awesome. Hulkenberg, we've talked about in other categories. I know TJ's a big fan of Heisme, who's great in this game. Stroll, who's the first companion you get, I loved. They're great, and just I think interplay between them is awesome. I love that there are these wind down moments in the evening where they'll just be sitting at a table or looking over the edge of a ship, and you can just go chat with them and learn more about their lives and their own personal goals and motivations and what scares them and what motivates them. It's excellent, and that extends to the NPCs as well. But I think that main core of party members are kind of at the heart of that story.
You kind of touched on something there, Donovan, about like getting to know each other and how they created this like whole bond mechanic that actually like incentivizes you to do that. I think that's kind of neat too.
Another thing that they've kind of like adopted from Persona, then like workshopped a little bit to switch up for Metaphor. It's great, but yeah, they reward you for talking to people and increasing your bond because you're talking to a character and be like, oh, you just unlocked this new ability that they can do in combat, or you now get a bonus to this. It's great. Also, I should mention Gallica, your fairy companion.
She's awesome.
Who's also excellent. Technically not playable.
She's like an iPod too. Yeah. She's the reason that your soundtrack is so awesome. Like all the music is generated from her, which I think is like hilarious. I think you kind of touched on it a little, Donovan, but like it was something that I found kind of striking compared to the Persona games. You as the main protagonist experience racism constantly throughout the game.
I forget the name of the class, but whatever you are is not. Yeah, people do not like it. You were definitely a minority.
You're like one of the bottom of the barrel. Sorry, what was that, Sam?
It's the Elda.
The Elda.
Elda, yeah. Elda. Yeah, when you're not Alan Alda, Elda. But shout out to anyone who's heard of the show MASH. Anyway, but yeah, like it was striking the first time like someone was outwardly racist to me in that game. I was like,
there's a store that doesn't serve you. When you go to it, they're like, oh, you're an Elder, like, please get out of here. They're like, don't come back. And then you eventually like do like a quest, then they realize you're cool. But it's like, they do not have much subtlety with some of the themes in there. And I know that didn't hit some people the right way, but I liked it. I thought it was cool.
I thought it was cool because also like coming from those other games in the Persona series, that's not really a thing that they ever really touched on. And it's just, it would be one thing if it was like occasional, but it's all throughout the game. Even just walking in the town, you hear people talking about you, even if you're not talking to them. They're like, ew. And like they say these things as you walk by them, they do a very good job of making you feel that hatred. And even Gallica at night, you know how you guys like, before you go to bed, you'll have these conversations, and she's even like, I'm sorry that happened to you today. Like, there's an empathy for people going through racism in this game or hate that I have not seen in many video games, and it really resonated with me.
Yeah, for a game that big budget from such a prominent studio, I thought that was pretty awesome. It's great, yeah.
You know, it's a small detail that like serves the narrative in this game, and it's not a big thing, but it kind of like gets the goosebumps on my arms started every time it happens. When you travel in this world, it like gives you this animation of the Gauntlet Runner moving to the place, and more narrates the journey there, and like sort of sets the stage for what the team is about to experience. And it's got some kick-ass music to go with it.
We should talk more about more here, because more is. And I know that sounds really stupid, but more really is the driver of the narrative in this game. There's a literal author in this game. There's a book that is. I'm sure there's something we're going to find out about that book by the end of the game. Pretty sure that's what's going to happen. But it's a book about a utopia. It's almost like a modern, either like a New York City. It's like a metropolis that's a utopia. Is where this place, and humans aren't garbage in it. Whereas in the game that you're playing, in Metaphor, humans are these beasts that you have to fight and like clean the world of. So it's this interesting like way to talk about the real world versus fantasy, right? And more is the nexus of that. His was it? It's not a library. What is it called? Academia. Yeah.
Mhm.
Academia is a very interesting location in the game, and it serves the same purpose as the creepy dude with the weird eye in Persona series.
Well, I was gonna say that I like way more than Igor, which is the strange looking dude in Persona. Yeah, he's very
100%.
But like every time I go to like upgrade stuff, talk to him, I'm like, oh cool, like I can do back to Academia. It's not how I felt about the Velvet Room in Persona.
And you get to pet the cat every time you go in there. It's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, those transitions to places, like it was like when you're into a really good anime series and they do that sort of intro to the episode every time. And I love that vibe. It was such like a setting the table for something really good every single time.
Also, I mean, speaking of like being like an anime, the like animated cutscenes in this game, whenever they pop up, like where they just go full 2D animated for like the major story moments, is great. Every time one of those popped up, I just like leaned back in my chair. I was like, oh, here we go. I would watch a series that was just those set in this universe.
They could make an awesome movie. Like this studio working with the right movie production company. Like I think you could see something like Final Fantasy Spirits Within quality from them if they wanted to do that. But then again, like their games are so damn cinematic, it's kind of like why bother when you could just keep making awesome games. But yeah, I think that's an excellent nomination for this category. Unfortunately, I don't think Ozzy's here to talk about Life is Strange Double Exposure. Did you play Donovan?
I did. Wait, I reviewed it. Yeah. That was me.
I just know Ozzy's like when I read Life is Strange, I'm just like Ozzy.
He is a big Life is Strange guy.
That's right. You did play this one.
Yeah, I enjoyed the story in Life is Strange probably more than the gameplay. I believe I gave it a 7, and my main criticisms were with like the mechanics and technical stuff. But story-wise, I thought it was awesome. It returns to Max Caulfield, who was the protagonist in the original Life is Strange. Up until this point, the series has kind of been an anthology that's kind of bounced around the different protagonists with loose threads connecting them. But this one was the first kind of full-on sequel to the original Life is Strange, set a decade later, which I believe the original game came out 10 years ago. Now she's like a professor at a school, and it becomes essentially a supernatural murder mystery because she has a friend who was killed, and then she unlocks the power to essentially walk between 2 different timelines, and the only differentiating factor between the timelines is that there's one where her friend was killed and one where she is alive still. And she has to use information from both of them to solve her murder and potentially stop something else dangerous from happening. And I think that they absolutely nailed the character of Max Caulfield. The original Life is Strange was Don't Nod. This one is what's the name of the studio that makes those games now? It's a different team. But
is it Deck 9?
Deck 9, yeah, Deck 9. Thank you. Yes, I know there was some like hesitation in the fan base about a different developer taking it over, but I mean, instantly you can tell like these people love Life is Strange and they love Max Caulfield. She's such a weird, quirky, like nerdy kind of character, and I think that they nail that part of her personality really well. It's a very video gamey thing that she talks to herself a lot out loud or in her head, but it feels like she's that kind of weird, like in the original game. It doesn't seem out of place when she's randomly like looking at a bird and tries to speak to it and stuff. And she still has that like weird quirk about her in this game that I really liked. I love that she still got her photography. That was like her hobby in the original game, and now she's I think it's like an in-residence photography tutor or instructor in this new one, which is great. It's just a cool continuation of her story. And what I think is interesting is that she's really the only returning character from Life is Strange. A lot of the other NPCs are not there or in the background. You'll see them like a social media feed. But yeah, it's a highlight I wrote in my review, but I think that they nailed the character of Max Caulfield really well. She's one of my favorite protagonists in the whole like choose your own adventure narrative genre. and I think she's great in this game. And I think the mystery of it is awesome. Just the supernatural aspect of it, where you can just walk between different worlds, and you'll see the differences. Where like in the universe where the friend was murdered, right? You go to the pub and there's a handful of people there, and people are kind of drinking their sorrows away, and it's cold and blue and gray. And then you go to the world where she's still alive, and there are Christmas decorations up and string lights, and people are like doing cheers and they're singing karaoke, and it's just these subtle and then kind of over the top ways that they just show how like grief like permeates through this entire community over the course of the story, which I thought was really well done in that game.
That's cool. Yeah, that's definitely fitting for this category then. I mean, this franchise is always kind of, if they don't screw it up, they're usually in this category when they release a game. Awesome. And then last but not least, Neva, which is that stylized to all hell, you and a wolf traveling through the world game. I know that this developer with like Gree, they tend to make games that are very artistic, both in the style, and also the storytelling. But yeah, Neva's here. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on that before we vote. No? Okay. What do you say? Should we vote?
Let's vote.
That sounds like the plan. So, best narrative game. I'm gonna start with TJ.
Oh, I think I'm going to stay with Hellblade 2 on this, just because every single thing in Hellblade 2 is in service of telling an amazing story.
I spelled it Hellbald, but you know,
it's a different game.
Who's like breaking the spreadsheet? Wait a minute, was I in the spreadsheet?
Now this is just the ballot count one. Okay. No one's in this one. Sam.
Yeah, this is really tough. Like you said, being able to dig deeply into each of these games to experience the narrative is really important. But I think I'm gonna have to go with TJ here and Hellblade 2. The fact that it continues that story and it shifts it from like grief to revenge. I kind of vibe with that.
Don't cross Sam, guys. Steve, host of the Steve Tendo Show.
I'm sticking with Mario and Luigi. I love a lot of the NPC character stories that you don't really find out right away. But I love those.
The deep, dark secrets of Snoutlet.
No, not Snoutlet. The Connie, or the like whoever the main.
Oh
girl
yeah.
Is. She has a nice little backstory that you don't. That she's looking for her mentor. So.
Oh. Okay. Nice. David, are you sticking with your vote?
Yeah, I'll stick with Tales of Kanzera.
Nice. That's also Bill's vote, by the way. Donovan.
As much as I just sang the praises for Life is Strange Double Exposure, it's probably my second favorite narrative of the year. I'm voting for Metaphor, ReFantazio.
Greg.
That's tough. Well, I was gonna vote with Donovan, but he changed his vote to Metaphor, and yeah, I'll do Metaphor. Metaphor is good too.
He never changed his vote. He had not voted.
Oh, sorry. He spoke so highly of it. I thought he was gonna sway the vote into the thing. So I thought
into what? Life is Strange?
Yeah, Life is Strange.
He only talked about it because he reviewed it.
Okay,
the game deserved to have its piece said.
Yeah,
we need somebody to talk about it, so we asked the person who played it. That's all it was. He wasn't saying, "Hey, vote for this." He was just saying, "Here's why you could vote for this."
Yeah, I'll do a Metaphor.
There you go. And yeah, I'm gonna vote for Metaphor. I trust Donovan that this story is gonna wrap up in a satisfying way. I do think they hit the nail on the head when it comes to having not just a story about political power struggles, but one of corruption.
Yeah.
Like it's fear mongering and corruption and all those undertones in that game that I think really, really make it the best narrative game. So yeah, let me count these votes real quick. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yep. Congratulations, Atlas and Sega, just kind of rocking it this year. Metaphor ReFantazio has won the Shacknews Award for the best narrative game of the year 2024.
Story will weave. Let's do it. You'll be a hero. Trust me.